For decades, Robert Vaughn was the definition of Hollywood sophistication, sharp, charming, and effortlessly cool. Best known as Napoleon Solo from The Man from U.n.c.l.e., he was the suave spy every man wanted to be and every woman admired. But behind the glitz and polished exterior, Vaughn lived a deeply private life, filled with secrets, regrets, and unfinished dreams. When he passed away in 2016 at the age of 83, his family thought they knew everything about him: his career highs, his political passions, his love for literature, and his quiet dignity in his later years. But nearly a decade later, while sorting through his old home in Connecticut, they stumbled upon something completely unexpected. Hidden away in the attic, untouched and covered in dust, was a small wooden chest containing letters, photographs, and personal items that Robert had never spoken about to anyone. At first, the discovery seemed innocent, just mementos from a long career. But as they read through the contents, tears began to fall. What they found revealed a side of Robert Vaughn that no one had ever seen. A man haunted by a lost love, by friendships broken too soon, and by regrets he carried silently to his grave. The letters inside exposed truths about Hollywood rivalries, personal confessions, and one heartbreaking secret he took to his final days. It was a discovery that forever changed the way his family and the world would remember him. Because sometimes, the real story isn't the one told in front of the camera, but the one buried in the attic, waiting to be found. Robert Vaughn was born on November 22, 1932 in New York City to parents who were both actors. It seemed as if destiny had already drawn his path toward the stage. From an early age, Robert was fascinated by storytelling, by the power of words, emotions, and illusion. Yet unlike many Hollywood hopefuls, Vaughn's dreams were never just about fame. He wanted meaning. After studying at Los Angeles City College and later earning a master's degree in theater, Robert's intellect set him apart in an industry obsessed with glamour. He was one of Hollywood's few leading men who could debate politics as passionately as he could deliver a monologue. He became a rare blend of intellect and charisma, a man equally comfortable in front of a camera or a congressional committee. His breakout came in 1964, when he landed the role of Napoleon Solo in The Man from U.n.c.l.e. The show's success was explosive. Vaughn became an international icon overnight, embodying charm, wit, and sophistication like no one else. But beneath the tailored suits and cool exterior, there was a man who struggled with loneliness and the pressures of fame. Friends from that era described him as disciplined but distant. He kept his emotions guarded, preferring to focus on his work rather than his personal life. Even as he starred in major films like The Magnificent Seven and Bullet, Vaughn often said he felt like an observer in his own success, as though he were playing a role both on screen and off. In private, he was thoughtful and reflective, keeping journals filled with musings about life, morality, and the price of ambition. He wrote often about how the pursuit of fame could become a cage, one that trapped even the most self-aware souls. Later in life, Robert's focus shifted toward family. He married Linda Staub, a British actress, in 1974, and the couple went on to have 2 children, Cassidy and Caitlin. By all accounts, fatherhood grounded him. Friends recall how his eyes would light up when talking about his kids. Yet even then, there were moments when he'd drift into silence, as if lost in a memory he couldn't share. That mystery lingered long after his death. When Robert passed away peacefully in November 2016 after a long battle with leukemia, his family mourned not just a husband and father, but a man they felt they never fully knew. His estate was carefully preserved, with many of his personal belongings boxed up and stored in the attic of their Connecticut home. For years, those boxes remained untouched, until nearly a decade later, when his daughter Cassidy decided it was time to sort through them. Inside, she found scripts, old movie reels, photographs, and awards, artifacts of a storied career. But in the corner of the attic, tucked behind an old trunk, was something different. A small, hand-carved wooden chest. It was locked, and the family had no key. Intrigued, they called a locksmith, expecting to find old letters or forgotten memorabilia. When the chest finally opened, the air seemed to change. Inside were neatly stacked envelopes, a few black and white photographs, and a small velvet pouch. The first letter was dated 1959, long before he was famous. The handwriting was unmistakably Robert's. As they began reading, tears filled their eyes. The letters were addressed to a woman named Evelyn. None of them had ever heard of her. In the letters, Robert poured out his heart, describing a love affair that had shaped his life but ended in heartbreak. He wrote about how her departure pushed him to pursue acting more fiercely, as though he could fill the void she left behind. There was also a journal entry describing a promise he made to keep her memory alive through art. For the Vaughn family, this was the first time they realized that behind the confident movie star was a man who had loved deeply and lost profoundly. When Robert Vaughn passed away in 2016, his family and fans mourned the loss of a man who had given so much of himself to the screen, the stage, and to the causes he believed in. But for years after his passing, his Los Angeles home stood untouched, his attic sealed off, filled with decades of memories. Vaughn's children, Cassidy and Caitlin, couldn't bring themselves to go through his belongings. It wasn't just about grief. It was about facing the truth of who their father was when the cameras stopped rolling. 9 years later, in 2025, they finally decided it was time. The house had been sold, and before handing over the keys, they wanted one last look. The attic had always been Vaughn's private space, a dimly lit room filled with old trunks, boxes of scripts, and the faint smell of aged wood and tobacco. But as they began to sort through the clutter, what they uncovered would leave them speechless. Behind a pile of old film reels marked "The Man from U.n.c.l.e., they found a dusty wooden chest Vaughn had padlocked shut. The key was taped to the underside of his writing desk, a place only he would have thought to hide it. When they finally opened the chest, the contents inside told a story far deeper and more emotional than anything he'd ever revealed publicly. Inside were hundreds of handwritten letters, some addressed to his co-stars, others to people whose names neither Cassidy nor Caitlin recognized. Many were signed but never sent. They spoke of guilt, loneliness, and a longing for reconciliation. Vaughn wrote about his complicated relationship with fame, how Hollywood's golden years had both blessed and cursed him. One letter, in particular, was addressed to his man from u.n.c.l.e. co-star David McCallum. In the letter, Vaughn admitted that during their years on set, he often felt overshadowed and insecure. While McCallum's fan base exploded, Vaughn felt the industry's cold indifference creeping in. He wrote, "I envied him more than I ever admitted. But he made me better. He made me work harder even when I resented it." That vulnerability shocked his children. For the first time, they saw not just the confident actor who played Napoleon Solo, but the deeply human man behind the smile. The discovery didn't end there. At the bottom of the chest, wrapped in an old piece of cloth, was a faded leather journal dating back to the 1950s, long before Vaughn's fame had peaked. The first few pages detailed his early struggles in New York, scraping together rent money while attending acting classes. But as the entries progressed, his words grew darker. He wrote about how the industry changed people, how integrity was often traded for opportunity. In one heartbreaking entry, Vaughn wrote about a woman he loved deeply but lost due to his own ambition. He never mentioned her name, but based on the date, it would have been before he married his wife, Linda Staub. "I thought success would fill the void she left," he wrote. "But success is just applause. It fades the moment the lights go out." His children, reading those words aloud, couldn't hold back their tears. For all the interviews, all the awards, and all the charm the public saw, Robert Vaughn had carried a private pain that few ever suspected. As they continued to go through the attic, they found old photos from the sets of Bullitt, The Magnificent Seven, and The Bridge at Remagen. Each had notes scribbled on the back, memories he'd wanted to preserve. On one photo of him standing beside Steve McQueen, he'd written, "He taught me silence can be louder than words." That attic, which they had once dreaded opening, became a time capsule of their father's soul. Vaughn hadn't just saved memorabilia, he'd preserved his essence, his regrets, and his truths. By the time they finished, they realized that what they found wasn't terrifying after all. It was hauntingly beautiful. As the evening sun cast long shadows across the attic floor, Cassidy and Caitlin sat quietly surrounded by their father's memories. What had started as a simple effort to clean out old boxes had turned into something far more profound, a journey into Robert Vaughn's hidden world. Yet, just as they thought they had seen everything, Caitlin noticed a loose floorboard beneath the chest. Something about the uneven wood caught her eye. When she pried it open, she found a small black velvet pouch tucked beneath. Inside was a silver locket tarnished with age. On one side was a faded photo of Vaughn as a young man, smiling beside a woman whose face neither of them recognized. On the other side was a folded piece of paper, so delicate it nearly fell apart as they opened it. It was a letter dated 1959, written in Vaughn's unmistakable handwriting. "To the one I never stopped loving, even when I told myself I had to," it began. The letter revealed the truth about the mysterious woman from his early journal entries. Her name was Evelyn, a stage actress Vaughn had met in New York before his rise to fame. The two had fallen deeply in love, but when Hollywood called, Vaughn left everything behind. In the letter, he confessed he had tried to find her years later, but never succeeded. He wrote, "Every role I've played, every character I've pretended to be, it was all me trying to fill the silence you left behind." For his children, that discovery changed everything. They had grown up seeing their parents as a stable, loving couple. But this letter revealed another side of their father, a man who carried the ghost of a lost love throughout his life. The more they read, the more they understood how deeply he felt things he never spoke of publicly. Beneath the pouch, they found a small reel of 8mm film wrapped in wax paper. It was labeled simply Home 1964. They took it downstairs and loaded it into an old projector Vaughn had kept in his study. The flickering images that appeared on the wall transported them back in time. Vaughn, young and confident, laughing with friends on a movie set. Then the scene changed. It showed him in a modest home, holding a baby, Cassidy as an infant, while Linda sat beside him, smiling. The footage played like a private memory never meant for public eyes. In those silent images, Vaughn looked peaceful, genuinely happy. But near the end of the film, the camera shook, and for a brief moment, it captured him staring into the lens, his smile fading as if lost in thought. It was just a second, but that expression said more than words ever could. It was the face of a man burdened by memories he couldn't let go. When the reel ended, the room was silent. Caitlin whispered, "He kept all of this hidden." Not because he was ashamed, but because he wanted to protect us from it. And perhaps she was right. Vaughn had spent his entire career mastering the art of appearing composed. Whether playing the charming Napoleon Solo or the calculating Lee in The Magnificent Seven, he projected control. But behind that facade was a man constantly reflecting on what his success had cost him. Among the final items they uncovered was a sealed envelope labeled, "For My Children." Inside was a short note, written in his final years. It read, "When you find this, don't be sad. Everything I did, every mistake, every silence, every secret was part of learning who I was. You were the best thing that ever happened to me. Remember me not for the roles I played, but for the lessons I tried to leave behind." The siblings sat for a long time, holding that note between them. For years, they had wondered what their father truly thought about life, fame, and love. Now they knew. The attic hadn't revealed something terrifying. It had shown the beautiful, complicated truth of Robert Vaughn's soul.